They put her on gate duty as a joke. Every day, Lieutenant Calloway stood at the base entrance while others smirked behind her back. Her uniform was perfect, her face expressionless as she checked IDs in silence. They called her Gate Girl and laughed. "What a waste of a uniform," they whispered. Then one afternoon, 3 black SUVs approached. When the legendary SEAL commander stepped out, everyone expected him to barely acknowledge her existence. Instead, he stopped, straightened, and saluted her first. The entire base froze in confusion. Who was she really? From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story intrigued you, please subscribe for more untold military stories that remind us respect is earned, not given. The sun rises over forward operating base Arcturus, casting long shadows across the dusty perimeter. Lieutenant Zephyr Calloway walks toward the main gate with measured steps, her posture perfect despite the weight of her equipment. From the mess hall window, a group of officers track her movement, their smirks visible even at a distance. "Gate duty, day 23, Captain Merrick Rhodes announces to his companions, taking bets on when she breaks. "Never gonna happen," Major Lennox replies, stirring his coffee. "Robots don't break. They just malfunction." Scattered laughter follows as they watch Zephyr reach her post, precisely at 0600 hours. She relieves the night guard with a crisp nod, inspecting her reflection in the guard booth window. She adjusts her uniform, though it needs no correction, everything in its place, everything according to protocol. The morning procession begins as it always does. Officers and enlisted personnel file through, presenting IDs with varying degrees of courtesy. Some avoid eye contact entirely. Others make it a point to stare directly at her, challenging her to react to their deliberate disrespect. When Captain Rhodes approaches, he deliberately drops his ID card as she reaches for it. "How is the weather down there, Calloway?" he asks as she bends to retrieve it. His companions laugh on cue. Zephyr hands him back his ID without comment, her face a careful blank. Only the slightest tightening around her eyes betrays any reaction at all. "Thank you, Captain Rhodes," she says, her voice professionally neutral. "At ease, Lieutenant," he replies with exaggerated formality. "We would not want you straining yourself with actual military bearing." More laughter follows as they move past her into the base. An hour later, a supply truck arrives. The civilian driver offers a genuine, "Thank you, ma'am," after she processes his clearance. The simple human acknowledgement feels foreign after weeks of dismissal from her peers. "You always this busy?" the driver asks, gesturing to the steady stream of personnel. "Standard operating procedure," she replies, already scanning the next ID. The driver nods, seeming to sense she is not one for small talk. "Well, have a good one, Lieutenant," he says, climbing back into his truck. As the morning shifts to afternoon, the base settles into its routine. Officers move between buildings with purpose. Training exercises commence in the eastern fields. Through it all, Zephyr stands at her post, checking IDs, monitoring the perimeter, logging unusual activities in the security database. Lieutenant Dresna approaches with 2 junior officers in tow. Tall and imposing, Dresna has made it her personal mission to remind Calloway of her place in the base hierarchy. "Calloway must have seriously pissed off Colonel Blackwood to get permanent gate duty," Dresna says loudly as she passes through. She does not bother lowering her voice. It is where they put the ones who cannot handle actual field work. One of the junior officers glances at Zephyr with something approaching sympathy, but quickly looks away when Dresna notices. "ID, please," Zephyr says, extending her hand. Dresna slaps her ID into Zephyr's palm with unnecessary force. "Must be fascinating work, Lieutenant, truly making use of all that training." "Thank you for your cooperation, Lieutenant Dresna," Zephyr responds, handing back the ID. Dresna lingers a moment longer than necessary. "You know what we call you in the officer's mess, right? Gate girl. Creative, I know, but it fits." She leans closer. "Word of advice, Calloway. Request a transfer before this becomes your entire military career, if it is not already too late." She walks away without waiting for a response, her junior officers hurrying to keep pace. The rest of the day passes without incident. At 1800 hours, Sergeant Vale arrives to relieve her. "Any excitement today, LT?" Vale asks, one of the few on base who treats her with basic courtesy. "Negative. Standard procedure followed throughout," Zephyr replies, handing over the digital log. Vale nods, settling into the booth. "See you tomorrow then." Zephyr walks across the base to her quarters, aware of the glances that follow her, some curious, most dismissive. The isolation has become routine, a fact of existence rather than a source of pain. Her quarters are sparse, containing only military-issue furniture and equipment. The bed is made with hospital corners. Her uniforms hang perfectly aligned in the small closet. A single photograph lies face down on her nightstand, the only personal item visible. She sits at her desk and opens a leather-bound journal, writing in what appears to be a personal cipher. Her movements are deliberate, methodical, each stroke of the pen precise, each page filled with the same neat script. Anyone watching might assume she is simply logging her day, maintaining the rigid self-discipline that seems to define her. Her secure phone vibrates. The caller ID shows only a black screen. She answers immediately. Calloway. "Status report, Lieutenant?" asks a voice on the other end. "Nothing to report, sir." "Position maintained," she responds without inflection. "Timeline?" "Assessment continuing as scheduled. Approximately 87% complete." "Acknowledged. Maintain protocol." "Yes, sir." As she ends the call, her sleeve pulls back slightly, revealing an unusual tattoo on her wrist. Geometric shapes form what might be a unit insignia, but nothing recognized on this base. She returns to her journal, documenting the day's events with the precision of someone for whom details matter more than most would understand. When finished, she locks the journal in a small case that requires both a key and her fingerprint to open. The face-down photograph catches her attention. She hesitates, then turns it over. The image shows a group of soldiers in non-standard combat gear, their faces partially obscured by equipment and shadow. They stand before a helicopter, arms around each other's shoulders. Zephyr is among them, but different somehow. Her posture is relaxed, her smile genuine, a version of herself that no one at Arcturus has ever seen. She studies the photo for exactly 30 seconds before returning it to its face-down position. The next morning arrives with a light rain that turns the base perimeter to mud. Zephyr walks to her post, ignoring the dampness that seeps through her uniform. The day promises to be a mirror of yesterday and the day before that. Captain Rhodes and his usual companions cut across her path, deliberately forcing her to step aside or collide with them. "Morning gate girl," Rhodes calls out. "Weather suits you, gray and dismal." Zephyr continues without responding, her pace unchanged. "Think she actually sleeps standing up?" one of the officers asks. "Like a horse?" "Probably powers down for the night," another replies. "Recharges her batteries." Their laughter fades as she reaches the gate. The night guard looks relieved to see her, eager to escape the rain and the monotony. "All quiet, Lieutenant," he reports, already moving past her. "Enjoy the sunshine." Zephyr takes her position, seemingly impervious to both the rain and the mockery. Her focus remains on the task at hand, watching the perimeter, checking IDs, maintaining security protocols that others consider a formality. By midday, the rain has stopped, but the damage is done. The area around the gate is a mess of mud and standing water. Officers arriving from field exercises track dirt through the checkpoint, some deliberately stomping their boots as they pass. A commotion draws her attention to the administration building. Colonel Blackwood emerges, surrounded by senior officers. They move purposefully toward the communications center, their expressions tense. Something has changed. Her phone vibrates, the black screen again. "Proceed with final assessment phase," the voice says without preamble. "Timetable accelerated." "Understood," she replies. "Reason for acceleration." "Command arriving within 48 hours. Prepare accordingly." The call ends. Zephyr slips the phone back into her pocket, her expression unchanged. But for those who might be watching closely, something shifts in her posture. A subtle readiness, like a predator sensing a change in the wind. The afternoon passes with increased activity across the base. Personnel move with greater urgency. The communications center remains a hub of constant traffic. Through it all, Zephyr maintains her post, observing, noting, evaluating. During her break, she finds a secluded spot behind the supply warehouse and retrieves her secure tablet. She reviews the base schematic, marking new observations. Security camera blind spots, guard rotation patterns, access point vulnerabilities. Each notation precise, each observation potentially vital. A message appears on her screen. Confirmation required. Command ETA 36 hours. She types a brief acknowledgement and powers down the device. As she stands to return to her post, a voice startles her. Something interesting, Lieutenant? Senior Communications Officer Reeves stands a few meters away, his expression curious. Just reviewing regulations, sir, Zephyr responds, tucking the tablet into her jacket. Reeves steps closer. Funny thing happened this morning. I was updating security protocols, and your file came up for clearance verification. He pauses, studying her face. There was an anomaly in the system. Your service record seems to have two different versions. A clerical error, I am sure, Zephyr says, her voice steady. Probably, Reeves agrees, though his tone suggests otherwise. Though I could not help but notice your previous posting was redacted. Not just classified, mind you, completely redacted. He smiles slightly. Not the usual career path for someone who ends up checking IDs at a forward operating base. The military works in mysterious ways, sir, she replies. That it does, Lieutenant. That it does. He steps aside to let her pass. Carry on. Zephyr returns to the gate, aware that Reeves watches her go. A complication, but not an immediate threat. Her mission parameters remain unchanged. The rest of the day passes without further incident. When her shift ends, she returns to her quarters and prepares her final assessment report. Each security vulnerability cataloged. Each procedural weakness documented. Each personnel failure noted with dispassionate precision. Tomorrow will bring command, and with them, the culmination of her assignment. After 3 weeks of invisibility, of being the base joke, Lieutenant Zephyr Calloway will finally complete her mission. And perhaps, just perhaps, the officers of Forward Operating Base Arcturus will understand who has really been standing at their gate all this time. A week passes with little change in the routine at Forward Operating Base Arcturus. The morning brings a new group of Rangers to the base, their arrival heralded by the distinctive sound of their transport helicopter. By afternoon, they have already absorbed the base's unofficial hierarchy and Lieutenant Calloway's place at the bottom of it. Zephyr stands at her post, watching as the new arrivals are given a tour by Captain Rhodes. He gestures in her direction, saying something that makes the Rangers laugh. The mockery has become background noise, as constant and unremarkable as the hum of generators or the distant sound of aircraft. The sun beats down on the checkpoint, turning the guard booth into an oven. Despite the heat, Zephyr's uniform remains immaculate, her posture perfect. Not a drop of sweat visible on her brow, not a hint of discomfort in her bearing. How does she do that? One of the new Rangers asks, observing her from across the yard. Rumor is she was stationed in Afghanistan for 3 years, another replies. This heat is nothing compared to that. That is not what I heard, Lieutenant Dresna interjects, approaching the group. Word is she had a complete breakdown during a routine exercise, could not handle the pressure. This is where they put you when you cannot be trusted with real responsibility. The Rangers nod, accepting this explanation without question. In a place where reputation is everything, Zephyr Calloway has been defined by others long before having any chance to define herself. The mockery evolves from dismissive comments to active humiliation. Later that afternoon, Lieutenant Dresna drives a Humvee through a massive puddle as Zephyr stands at her post, deliberately spraying mud across her immaculate uniform. At least now she matches the dirt she stands in all day, Dresna calls out to appreciative laughter from her passengers. Mud drips from Zephyr's uniform, but she remains at attention, eyes forward, expression unchanged. Only a slight tightening of her jaw betrays any reaction at all. During her break, Zephyr meticulously cleans every spot from her uniform in the restroom. Her reflection in the mirror remains unchanged, but something flickers in her eyes, not anger or hurt, but something colder, more calculating. She takes a small digital camera from her pocket and photographs the mud stains before washing them away. When she returns to her post, the air feels different, a tension that was not there before. She notes 3 security personnel checking the perimeter fence with greater care than usual. The communications center has increased activity. Something has changed. That afternoon, Senior Communications Officer Reeves stops at the gate, ID already extended. He glances at his tablet, then at Zephyr, then back to his screen. That is odd, he mutters, studying something in her file. Is there a problem, sir? Zephyr asks, her voice professionally neutral. He quickly closes the screen. No, nothing at all, Lieutenant. He hurries through, glancing back once with a puzzled expression. Zephyr logs the interaction in her mental file. Another complication, potentially significant. Her secure phone vibrates briefly, a text message. 2 words. Maintain position. As evening approaches, Colonel Blackwood emerges from the administration building, surrounded by senior officers. Their expressions are serious, their conversation hushed. They head directly to the communications center without acknowledging the salutes of passing personnel. A base-wide training exercise is announced over the PA system. All personnel except essential security will participate. Zephyr, of course, remains at her post while the others run drills. From her position, she observes the exercise with an expert's eye, noting flaws in formation and tactical weaknesses that the commanding officers miss. She makes mental notes, her gaze analytical. Captain Rhodes passes the checkpoint with his squad, all in full combat gear. "Try not to fall asleep while we do the real work, Gate Girl," he calls out. His men laugh on cue. "Good luck with your exercise, Captain," Zephyr responds evenly. "Luck has nothing to do with it," Rhodes retorts. "Skill and training, Calloway. Something you might want to acquire someday." Zephyr watches them move toward the training area. Rhodes leads his men in a haphazard formation, failing to maintain proper intervals or secure their flanks. Vulnerable, sloppy, potentially fatal in an actual combat situation. The exercise continues until dusk, the sounds of blank ammunition and shouted commands echoing across the base. When it concludes, personnel return to their quarters, some celebrating their performance, others nursing wounded pride. That night in her quarters, Zephyr retrieves a secure tablet hidden beneath her mattress. The screen illuminates her face as she reviews satellite imagery of the base. Certain areas are highlighted in red. She zooms in on the northwest perimeter, making annotations on what appears to be a vulnerability assessment. Her fingers move across the screen with practiced efficiency, marking entry points, camera positions, guard rotations. She overlays the data with the observations from today's exercise, creating a comprehensive security analysis that would impress even the most demanding tactician. A message appears: confirmation required. Vulnerability assessment 87% complete. She types a brief response when suddenly the base alarm sounds. Her tablet immediately goes dark as she snaps to alertness. The announcement comes through: attention all personnel. Special Operations Command visiting, full protocol. Outside her window, she sees officers scrambling to attention, polishing buttons, straightening uniforms. This is not a scheduled inspection. Something has triggered this visit, and the timing cannot be coincidental. Zephyr secures her tablet in its hidden compartment and quickly reviews her quarters for any sign of her true mission. Satisfied that everything is concealed, she straightens her uniform and prepares to return to her post. The piece on the chessboard, seemingly insignificant, yet perfectly positioned. As she steps outside, the base is in controlled chaos. Officers bark orders at enlisted personnel. Maintenance crews hastily address long-ignored issues. Even Colonel Blackwood appears, inspecting the administration building with anxious scrutiny. "Calloway," a voice calls out. Captain Rhodes approaches, his uniform freshly pressed. "You are still on gate duty. Make sure everything is by the book. SOCOM does not tolerate sloppiness." "Yes, sir," she responds, moving toward her post. "And for God's sake, try to look like a proper soldier for once," he adds, straightening his own collar. Zephyr takes her position at the gate, aware that this moment represents the culmination of her assignment. 3 weeks of careful observation, of documented vulnerabilities, of strategic patience, all leading to this unscheduled visit that feels anything but random. Minutes later, back at her post, Captain Rhodes passes by with his usual entourage. "Try not to embarrass us, Gate Girl," he says, offering a mocking salute. The SEALs do not take kindly to sloppiness. "I will endeavor to meet their standards, sir," Zephyr replies. "Their standards?" Rhodes laughs. "You would need years of actual combat experience to even understand their standards." If he notices the slight curve of her lips, the first hint of genuine emotion she has shown in weeks, he gives no indication. Instead, he positions himself and his officers near the checkpoint, eager to make a good impression on the arriving dignitaries. As twilight settles over the base, 3 black SUVs approach the main gate. The base falls into an expectant hush. The lead vehicle stops, and the rear door opens. Commander Thorne Westlake steps out, a legend among special operators. His weathered face bears the scars of battles few have survived. His eyes, clear and penetrating, scan the perimeter with the instinctive caution of a man who has learned that danger rarely announces itself. His team forms around him, elite operators carrying themselves with the quiet confidence of men who have nothing to prove. They wear standard uniforms but move differently than the base personnel, more fluid, more aware, more present in each moment. Zephyr stands at attention as they approach the gate, her posture perfect, her expression neutral as always. But something has changed in her bearing, a subtle shift that only the most observant might notice. The slightest squaring of her shoulders, the barely perceptible lift of her chin. Colonel Blackwood hurries forward, hand extended. "Commander Westlake, this is an unexpected honor. Had we known you were coming, we would have prepared a proper welcome." Westlake shakes his hand briefly. "This is not a social call, Colonel. Recent intelligence suggests possible security concerns with forward operating bases in this region. My team is conducting surprise inspections." Of course," Blackwood nods, gesturing toward the administration building. "We maintain the highest standards at Arcturus. I would be happy to give you a personal tour of our security measures." Westlake's gaze moves past the colonel, scanning the assembled personnel until it reaches the checkpoint. His eyes find Zephyr, and for a moment, he simply stares. "Commander," Colonel Blackwood prompts, noticing the shift in attention. "In a moment, Colonel," Westlake replies, already moving toward the gate. Captain Rhodes steps forward, eager to introduce himself, but Westlake moves past him without acknowledgement. His team follows, creating a perimeter around him through practiced positioning rather than obvious maneuvers. The base personnel watch in confusion as Commander Westlake approaches Lieutenant Calloway directly. Whispers spread through the ranks. Why would an elite operator give his attention to the base joke? What could possibly merit this diversion? Zephyr stands at perfect attention as Westlake approaches. Her face reveals nothing, but her eyes meet his directly, without the deference others might show to his rank and reputation. Westlake stops before her, close enough that only she can hear his next words. "I was told I would find you here," he says quietly. "Though I admit, I had my doubts." "Protocol dictated this approach, sir," she responds, equally soft. "And your assessment?" "Nearly complete. The arrival of your team provides the final variable." Westlake nods slightly. "Then let us proceed with the next phase." He steps back, raising his voice for all to hear. "Lieutenant, I will need to see your security logs and access protocols." "Yes, sir," Zephyr responds formally. "They are available at your convenience." Colonel Blackwood approaches, confusion evident on his face. "Commander, perhaps you would prefer to start with our command center? Lieutenant Calloway is merely our gate security." "I am well aware of who Lieutenant Calloway is," Westlake replies, his tone making it clear the matter is not up for discussion. "Her position is precisely why I wish to begin here." The confusion among the base personnel grows. Captain Rhodes steps forward, unable to contain himself. "Sir, with all due respect, if you are concerned about base security, there are more qualified officers who could brief you." Westlake turns slowly, fixing Rhodes with a stare that has made hardened fighters step back. "And you are?" "Captain Merrick Rhodes, sir, 3rd Battalion Tactical Lead." "Captain Rhodes," Westlake repeats, as if committing the name to memory. "I do not recall asking for your input on how to conduct my inspection." Rhodes swallows visibly. "No, sir." "Of course not, sir." "Then perhaps you could step aside and allow me to continue with my assigned tasks." As Rhodes retreats, Westlake turns back to Zephyr. The slightest nod passes between them, an acknowledgement invisible to all but the most observant. "Now, Lieutenant," Westlake says, "show me exactly how security functions at Forward Operating Base Arcturus." Zephyr steps out from behind her post for the first time in weeks. "With pleasure, Commander." Commander Westlake approaches the checkpoint with the measured stride of a man accustomed to command. His eyes scan the perimeter, habit rather than necessity, before settling on Lieutenant Calloway. He stops abruptly, recognition flashing across his face. His team notices the shift immediately. The operators exchange glances, hands instinctively moving closer to their sidearms. Years of combat have taught them to read their commander's subtle cues. Master Chief Kovac, Westlake's second-in-command, steps slightly forward, positioning himself at a better angle to observe both the commander and the surrounding base personnel. His expression remains neutral, but his eyes miss nothing. The base personnel watching from a respectful distance notice something has changed in the atmosphere. Captain Rhodes straightens his posture, suddenly uncertain. Colonel Blackwood frowns, sensing a shift in dynamics he does not understand. Westlake approaches Zephyr directly. Instead of presenting his ID as protocol dictates, he straightens to his full height. His hand rises in a perfect formal salute, the kind reserved for superior officers or moments of profound respect. "Honor to see you again, Wraith," he says, using a call sign no one on this base has heard before. Complete silence falls. Every officer watches in confusion as Zephyr returns the salute with equal precision. "Likewise, Commander," she responds, her voice carrying in the stillness. Captain Rhodes steps forward, confusion and indignation warring on his face. "Commander, this is Lieutenant Calloway, our gate security." "I know exactly who she is," Westlake interrupts, his voice cutting like steel. He does not take his eyes off Zephyr. His second-in-command, Master Chief Kovac, notices Rhodes's expression and moves beside him. "You do not know who she is?" he asks, genuine surprise in his voice. "That is Lieutenant Calloway," Rhodes responds defensively, his confidence faltering. "That is Go 6, Kovac replies, just loud enough for nearby personnel to hear. "The only survivor of Operation Nightshade. She extracted an entire team under heavy fire after her commanding officer was killed. 3 congressional commendations, all classified." Rhodes' face drains of color as he realizes who he has been tormenting for weeks. Lieutenant Dresna pushes forward through the gathering crowd. "That is impossible. She is just a washout, assigned to gate duty." Kovac turns to her, his expression hardening. "And you are?" "Lieutenant Dresna, sir." "Well, Lieutenant Dresna, perhaps you should consider that your assessment abilities need significant improvement." Colonel Blackwood intervenes, his voice strained with forced calm. "Commander Westlake, there seems to be some confusion. Lieutenant Calloway was assigned to us 3 weeks ago as a standard security officer." "Was she?" Westlake asks, raising an eyebrow. "And it never occurred to you to question why an officer with her qualifications would be assigned to check IDs at a gate?" Blackwood's expression shifts from confusion to dawning realization. "Are you saying she was placed here deliberately? Under whose authority?" "Mine," a new voice answers. All heads turn to see General Harlow stepping out of the third SUV. Silver-haired and ramrod straight, despite his 60 years, Harlow commands attention without effort. "General," Colonel Blackwood stammers, snapping to attention. "We had no idea you would be joining Commander Westlake." "That was rather the point, Colonel," Harlow replies dryly. He walks to where Zephyr stands, still at attention. "At ease, Lieutenant. I believe your cover has been sufficiently blown." Zephyr relaxes her posture slightly, the first time anyone at Arcturus has seen her do so. "Yes, sir." General Harlow addresses the assembled personnel. 3 weeks ago, intelligence suggested that forward operating base Arcturus might have significant security vulnerabilities. Rather than conduct a standard inspection, which would only show us what you wanted us to see, we decided on a different approach. He gestures to Zephyr. "Lieutenant Calloway was inserted as a seemingly low-level officer to observe your operations from the inside." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Eyes that had looked at Zephyr with dismissal or contempt now regard her with confusion, reassessment, even fear. "Lieutenant Calloway is one of our most decorated special operations officers," Harlow continues. "Her assignment was to document every security breach, every procedural failure, every vulnerability that could potentially be exploited by hostile forces." Captain Rhodes steps forward, his voice strained. "Sir, with all due respect, if this was an official evaluation, we should have been informed." "Should you?" Harlow asks, his tone sharpening. "Tell me, Captain, does the enemy announce themselves before exploiting your weaknesses? Do they file proper paperwork before infiltrating your perimeter?" Rhodes falls silent, his gaze dropping. "Lieutenant," General Harlow turns to Zephyr. "Your assessment, please." Zephyr retrieves her secure tablet from inside her uniform jacket. Her voice shifts as she speaks, the carefully neutral tone replaced by crisp, authoritative precision. "Forward operating base. Arcturus has 17 critical security vulnerabilities. 9 of which could be exploited with minimal resources by hostile forces, she begins. The northwest perimeter fence has a blind spot between camera positions 3 and 4 that has gone unaddressed for at least 2 weeks. Guard rotations are predictable and maintain the same pattern regardless of threat level. Communication protocols are routinely bypassed for convenience. She continues methodically, detailing every flaw, every shortcoming, every potential point of failure. The base personnel listen in stunned silence as she dismantles their sense of security with surgical precision. Most critically, she concludes, base personnel have demonstrated a consistent tendency to underestimate or dismiss potential threats that do not conform to their expectations. This cognitive vulnerability may be the most dangerous of all. General Harlow nods, taking the tablet from her. Thank you, Lieutenant. Exemplary work, as always. He turns to Colonel Blackwood. Your base has failed this evaluation spectacularly, Colonel. Under normal circumstances, this would result in immediate command restructuring. Blackwood pales visibly. General, I assure you. However, Harlow interrupts, Lieutenant Calloway has recommended that you be given the opportunity to address these issues under supervision. She believes the fundamental structure is sound, despite the numerous failures in execution. Relief washes over Blackwood's face. Thank you, General. And, Lieutenant, I give you my word that every vulnerability will be addressed immediately. Harlow nods curtly. See that it is. Commander Westlake's team will remain on base for 1 week to oversee the implementation of security improvements. He glances at Zephyr. Lieutenant, you are relieved of your cover assignment. Report to Commander Westlake for reintegration to your unit. Yes, sir, Zephyr responds. As the general turns to leave, Captain Rhodes steps forward. Sir, I would like to formally apologize to Lieutenant Calloway for any disrespect shown during her assignment. Harlow pauses, looking to Zephyr. Lieutenant? Zephyr regards Rhodes steadily. No apology necessary, Captain. Your behavior was precisely what my mission required. Had you treated me with respect, I might not have discovered the full extent of the base's vulnerabilities. Rhodes flinches slightly at her words. Within the hour, Base Commander Colonel Blackwood calls an emergency meeting in the main briefing room. All senior officers are present, along with Commander Westlake and his team. Lieutenant Calloway sits beside Westlake, her posture still perfect but somehow different. She occupies her space with quiet authority now, no longer invisible. Let me be absolutely clear, Blackwood begins, his voice tight with controlled anger. What happened here represents a complete failure of professional military conduct. Lieutenant Calloway was performing a vital security function. And instead of being supported in that mission, she was subjected to unprofessional behavior that actively undermined base security. The assembled officers shift uncomfortably in their seats. Captain Rhodes stares fixedly at the table before him. In a classified room, classified files are opened, Colonel Blackwood continues. Lieutenant Calloway was not assigned to gate duty as punishment. She was conducting a comprehensive security audit of the entire installation, authorized at the highest levels. Zephyr stands at parade rest, her expression still professionally neutral. The enemy does not announce themselves with rank and decoration, she explains simply. Vulnerabilities often exist where complacency and arrogance intersect. Commander Westlake confirms her findings will strengthen protocols across all forward bases. Lieutenant Calloway's work has likely saved lives we will never know needed saving, he adds. Colonel Blackwood nods in agreement. Effective immediately, all security protocols will be reviewed and updated. Commander Westlake's team will conduct training sessions on proper procedure, and I expect every officer to demonstrate the professionalism that was sorely lacking during Lieutenant Calloway's assignment. He pauses, looking directly at Captain Rhodes and Lieutenant Dresna. Some of you may face disciplinary action for your conduct. Consider yourselves fortunate that Lieutenant Calloway has advocated for training rather than dismissal. The meeting concludes with assignments for immediate security improvements. As the officers file out, many glance at Zephyr with new eyes, seeing for the first time the soldier who had stood among them all along. Later that evening, Zephyr returns to her quarters to find Commander Westlake waiting outside her door. Quite the performance, Lieutenant, he says as she approaches. 3 weeks without breaking cover. Most would have revealed themselves after the first few days of disrespect. The mission required authenticity, she replies simply. Breaking cover would have compromised the results. Westlake studies her face. Still, it could not have been pleasant. Pleasant was not the objective, sir. He nods, understanding. Your findings have already been transmitted to other forward bases. General Harlow believes your methodology should be implemented more widely. That would be efficient, Zephyr agrees. Westlake smiles slightly. The same methodical response. Some things never change. His expression grows more serious. The team has missed you, Wraith. After Nightshade, when you transferred out, it left a hole. Something flickers in her eyes, a brief glimpse of the person behind the perfect soldier. Nightshade required adjustments, for all of us. That it did, Westlake agrees quietly. Will you be rejoining the unit after this? Those orders have not yet been confirmed, she responds, though something in her voice suggests she knows more than she is saying. Westlake nods, understanding the boundaries of classified information. Get some rest, Lieutenant. Tomorrow we'll be busy. The next morning, Zephyr arrives at the gate as usual, but everything has changed. Officers stand straighter. Protocols are followed perfectly. Those who once mocked her now avoid her gaze. Captain Rhodes approaches, visibly uncomfortable but determined. Lieutenant Calloway, I wanted to speak with you privately. Captain, she acknowledges. I owe you a genuine apology, he says, meeting her eyes with effort. My behavior was unprofessional and unworthy of my rank. Zephyr studies him for a moment. Your behavior was consistent with the base culture, Captain. That was the real problem my mission identified. That does not excuse it, he insists. No, she agrees. It does not. But it does provide context for improvement. Rhodes nods, accepting her assessment. For what it is worth, I am genuinely sorry. Noted, Captain, she replies, then adds, apology accepted. As he walks away, Commander Westlake approaches for his morning briefing. You were surprisingly gentle with him, Westlake observes. Humiliation serves no tactical purpose at this point, she responds. The objective is improved security, not retribution. Westlake smiles slightly. Always the strategist. It is what I was trained for, she reminds him. As they walk toward the administration building, Westlake says quietly, You could have told them who you were at any point. It would have made your assignment considerably easier. That would have defeated the purpose of the assessment, she replies, the ghost of a smile finally playing at the corners of her mouth. The point was to observe them as they truly are, not as they would present themselves to someone they recognized as important. And what did you learn? He asks. That security is ultimately about people, not systems, she answers. The most sophisticated perimeter means nothing if the personnel behind it are complacent or arrogant. Westlake nods thoughtfully. A lesson many bases could stand to learn. They will, Zephyr says with quiet confidence. General Harlow has authorized the expansion of the program. My next assignment begins in 2 weeks. Another base? Westlake asks. Classified, she responds, but there is warmth in her voice now. As Westlake's team completes their inspection and prepares to depart, Zephyr finalizes her report. Her final assessment is complete. New orders await. Another base, another evaluation. As she prepares to leave Arcturus, the same officers who once mocked her stand at attention, offering sincere salutes. She returns their salutes with perfect form, her expression finally softening slightly. No words of resentment, no reminders of past slights. The true measure of strength has already been demonstrated. Colonel Blackwood approaches as she prepares to board the transport helicopter. Lieutenant Calloway, I want to thank you personally. Your assessment, while difficult to hear, has already made this base stronger. That was the objective, sir, she replies. If I may ask, he says hesitantly, will you be conducting similar evaluations elsewhere? She considers him for a moment. Security protocols are only as strong as the people implementing them, Colonel. Remember that, and you will never need another visit from someone like me. Blackwood nods, understanding the implicit warning. Safe travels, Lieutenant. As the helicopter lifts off, Zephyr looks down at forward operating base Arcturus. From above, it looks orderly, secure, impenetrable, but she knows better. Security is never about appearances. It is about vigilance, respect, and the recognition that threats rarely announce themselves. In her pocket, her secure phone vibrates with new orders. Another base, another assignment, another opportunity to expose the vulnerabilities that others cannot see. She reads the message and allows herself a small smile. The woman they put on gate duty as a joke has just been promoted.